Hello, everyone. A very, very warm welcome. I'm absolutely thrilled to be co-hosting this session along with Gain today. I'm Sharon Bly, Lead Health and Sustainability at the Consumer Goods Forum. We're co-founders of the Workforce Nutrition Alliance along with the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. So we're on a journey to impact millions of people, millions of workers and associates all around the globe. And we really like to help and support all of the companies in this space to really give them inspiration on how you can adopt the programs that we've outlined in the Workforce Nutrition Alliance that really can improve population health all around the globe. So absolutely thrilled to be with our Lighthouse leader today, Google, who are going to share insights, levers and solutions that they have identified to drive workforce nutrition in their organizations. So I hope from today's session that you'll be inspired and you'll get some key takeaways that you can take back to your organization. And of course, along with Gain, the team at the Workforce Nutrition Alliance, we're here to support you in your adoption and in your implementation and to help you impact your workers' health all around the globe. As you can see here, we have a fabulous panel of experts who are joining me today. Ty Beale, who's a Senior Technical Specialist of Gain, Peter de Graaf, who's the Director of LIDAR, Michael Kahn, a Global Culinary Strategy and Development Lead at Google, and of course, Barbel, my counterpart at Gain, who's the Global Lead of the Workforce Nutrition Alliance. And just before we get into today's session, the antitrust caution statement. This is something that we respect on all of our webinars and all of our calls that we lead across the Workforce Nutrition Alliance. So what should you expect today? So we will, Michael will be kicking off sharing the holistic approach around Google's commitments and how they're balancing Plan Forward and Healthy People on a healthy planet. And then Ty will be taking us through, Tarun will be taking us through a fireside chat with this great panel of experts. We'd love to get some questions and some interaction from you. So you can see whether it's at the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen, the chat and the Q&A function. So if there are things that you want to ask this great panel of experts, please do think of your questions. If we don't get to them on today's session, we'll of course put our contact details into the chat so you can contact Barbara or myself to follow up afterwards. And then finally, to continue along with advocating and building capacity on workforce nutrition around the world, we will be starting a masterclass series in September. So again, if you're interested in more information, do not hesitate to reach out to us. So with that, let's get into the session. And I'm absolutely thrilled that Michael will be kicking us off. I will stop sharing my screen and pass it over to you, Michael. Michael.
Well, thank you all for having me. Such an honor to be part of this group, and really excited to share what we're doing. We, of course, think we're just doing the same thing every day, and so it's fun to share and really realize what impact we actually are having. So my role as Global Culinary Strategy and Development Lead for Food at Google is to help navigate our 43 vendor partners across the world to be driving in the same fashion we are offering those levels that we desire and making sure that we are all doing our best to fulfill the mission that we've put forth. So our vision is this: to inspire and enable the Google community to thrive through their food choices and experiences. Food is core to the culture at Google. It's really one of the places where people meet. There's a lot of historical anecdotes about Gmail being started in the line at a cafe. A lot of the Pixel camera work has discussions about being two people having coffee and having conversations about how one person sees or doesn't see and the other one does. So it's really instrumental. Our Google hired their chef, was employee number 53 before they had HR. And even one of our food program managers today in London is employee number 80. We are about consumer choice first and foremost, but then we dovetail in many different needs and guides that we do. And you can see we really have a large reach. We also have some really good brand recognition. So between our large reach, our brand recognition, and our ability to get with suppliers, we can really start to have impact. We do about 240,000 meals a day. That's probably Monday through Thursday. Monday and Wednesday through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Monday and Fridays are lighter. We have about 13,000 vendor partners who are actively pursuing the operations around the world in 386 cafes in 56 countries, 57 countries today. Sorry, that number changes sometimes. Um, we are actively working to support two of the very large publicly stated goals are net zero by 2030 on carbon emissions and food loss and waste to be 50% reduced by consumer with zero going to landfill. And we're on the right path. The interesting thing throughout our work is where do these conflicts arise in competing priorities? There's a consumer choice program, but at the same time, we need to get to carbon net zero. Food may never get to carbon net zero, but we need to do our part to make it an easier lift. The other things that we do, we have a huge focus on supplier diversity. Google, as a corporation, is seated at the $1 billion roundtable, which is we've pledged to spend greater than $1 billion on supplier diversity. And then we do agro-biodiversity. We also are very supportive of regenerative agriculture, even though we take no metrics against it and no credit for any carbon sequestration yet. We are waiting for the science to catch up and be more robust and something we can really hang our hat on. We have nutritional growth commitments, and part of this, one of our public commitments was to this corporation about improving workforce health. We also have we do that by enhanced culinary training. We're increasing agrobiodiversity based on the NOR 50 food list, and we support nutrition, diversity, and balanced diets through education and choice architecture programming. We're very specific about portion size. We're very specific about where things go. We're specific about how words end up on a menu. So when we think about our sustainability and nutrition commitments, we take a balanced plant forward approach. We find this supports the health of our employees. We make the better choice the easier choice in all things that we do with Choice Architect, and Balanced Plant Forward falls under that as well. Meat still has a place at the table, but it doesn't need to be a 16-ounce cowboy steak. It can be a 3-ounce sliced strip, or if the consumer wants more, by all means they can take more, but our first pass is going to be portion controlled. Balanced Plant Forward is a style of cooking and eating that emphasizes and celebrates, but is not limited to, plant-based foods that reflect evidence-based principles of health and sustainability. I remember seeing Rick Bayless present about 15 years ago about Oaxacan food, and this always resonated with me. Meat has a place on the plate, but it should be an accoutrement, not the center. Let's make vegetables the center. And historically, that's what we ate, and I'll get into that when we do some training that we're doing. It really resonates when you go back to people's families and histories, and you can get past this socioeconomic need of some animal protein being, the key to the success metrics in their life. Our Balanced Plant Forward approach starts in our kitchen. It really needs to come alive in the food that we produce. And since we're a user choice or consumer choice, we call them users, a consumer choice program, having delicious food brings them on the journey. And we say that we start with flavor rules. If it's not delicious, no one comes on the journey with you. If it is delicious, they may not care what it is. If we put vegan on there, we're finding out through behavioral science that vegan might be a triggering word, but it is less and less with the generations coming forward now. So we very much work with our kitchens and with our hourly staff to build the curriculum based with the Culinary Institute of America. We spent 5 years now building this curriculum, and we're in year 2 of rollout. It is a robust 18 hours online, 42 hours of in-person train the trainer model training that we've worked with the Culinary Institute. It's now a pro chef series in their curriculum, in their continuing education curriculum. It is really about how to cook vegetables better, how to cook starches better, what gives them color, what gives them flavor, where's the umami come in, what's the various cooking techniques that we can be successful with. It's really important to us that all levels of culinary are engaged, and we can tell the managers they have to go through it, but from an hourly standpoint, it's harder to mandate it from various legal reasons, by country, by union, by contract, by agreement. So we've worked with the Food for Climate League for 2 years to build an intrinsic motivation that created a real drive for hourly cohorts to sign up. And we found that going back to their history of their family, what did their grandfather make? What did their grandmother make? How does that present and give them energy and enthusiasm to serve it in the cafes? It's been really exciting that our first cohort was in the Bay, where we have a lot of command and control and we have a lot of interaction. And initially, I thought only large sites would. Large site has more than 1,000 people in a building. But in Latin America, they really embraced it. And they embraced it so much that 2 people in Argentina are going through the program. Argentina is a small office. 10 people in Mexico City, another small office. We have a lot of people in Sao Paulo. It's our biggest office in Latin America. But it was really, we will have 90 people graduating in the cohort this month, in the hourly cohort from Latin America. And that is with managers who went through a Culinary Institute of America training, who then mentored other trainers, and then we map it out so that it's about 1 trainer per 6 hourlies in the cohort. This is the metric of the time. It's about 60 hours total. Every week they have meetings, they have some practicals. There's 18 hours of online, and I can see the online reports very clearly. It's we've got about 890 people in the actual program online, and 590 have completed it. My goal is to get 1,000 people through the program by the end of the year. And that's globally. We utilize this teachings. It gets everybody on the journey with us, which is really impactful, because they now understand why we're doing these things, why we're doing these nudges, where Choice Architect comes in, why we're asking them on a vegetarian dish to use more flowery language that brings people in and excites them about the dish. Before, they just did it because they were told to, but now we're really seeing great impact of awareness and knowledge. So we nudge people. We're very concerned about portions. We map the offering carefully. I mean, craveable food, it can be anything. Decadent food is specific and should be in a very small portion and very offered shortly. We don't have a lot of fryers in any of our state cafes. They're there for falafels. Where we put the food is very important. The more balanced plant forward goes in the front of the line. The larger, heavier, or more decadent food might go towards the end or a harder place. When you walk in, the salad station and the spa water should be the first things that you see. How we present the food, we're finding that plating helps with our queuing. In a business and industry, everybody comes to lunch at 12:05. You can't get anybody to lunch any other time. So if there's 1,000 people in the building, they're all there for lunch at 12:05, which is hilarious, because if they just came 15 minutes one way or the other, they wouldn't be in line. But we do worry about queuing. And so plating really helps. Plating helps our portion also. And then how we promote and how we prompt. And then personalization is one of those areas where customization is for us to make the dish, and then they can go add things to it. But personalization is you going down the line and saying what you want in everything, specifically. This also has the benefit of giving us the availability to address other dietary needs, such as halal in our spaces and other faith-based meals, those that we can execute. Kosher is not, you can't do kosher in a non-kosher kitchen, so we actually bring that in as needed. It has a great impact on the environment. We're always focused on where things are going, how we're doing, what our impact is with the decisions we make. So how we purchase is important. What we're purchasing is important. And right now, as I said earlier, we're really looking at regenerative agriculture as a important aspect to support, but we're taking no credit for it from a carbon or sustainability. But what we will be is set up when that does come alive and things are starting to be mapped out and there's good certifications. I know there's a lot of certifications out there right now, but they're all somewhat different. We do a lot of upcycled imperfect produce. We work with places like Matriarch Foods that divert 30 million pounds of tomatoes in Virginia that are going to a landfill. They've been harvested but didn't make a selection for color or shape, or they've managed to divert that and they make a Posada Plus. And Do Good Chicken was doing a great job. Apparently it was not a sustainable business model, but we hope for the next one. So we're always, and even things like Do Good Chicken, we get engaged and we support, and then we do what we can. And we're always, I think that makes us ready for the next one, even when it's not successful. From an environmental impact, these all really tear down into very core foundational aspects. We have a protein strategy that's very focused on portion size, what we're doing, what can we mitigate with waste, where does waste come in. And then we actually found with dairy, it was a waste stream and a protein stream. We needed a 20% reduction of dairy from a carbon standpoint. And with a waste reduction, we've mitigated 29% of a dairy reduction, really with no impact to the user. We've also made some other small changes, like any specialty coffee at a barista operated coffee bar is with a non-dairy. Dairy is an option, but we menu it with non-dairy. And then we always track the food waste with various companies. We're doing some pilots with plate waste recovery that are camera-enabled systems that sit over tray returns. We've got back of the house scales and cameras that are capturing waste, and we get weekly reports that we can watch variance and shifts, and we have a B-side team, a behavioral science team that does some interventions, and we can see what the interventions have happened. So I think I stayed in time, pretty close to time. I'm excited about what I do. I've never been as professionally fulfilled. It's a dream, and I'm so glad to share it with everybody.
Many thanks, Michael. Many thanks, Michael. Very impressive presentation. Thank you so much for taking everybody through the comprehensive steps that Google is taking to advance the balanced plant forward agenda. I can only imagine the complexity of having 240,000 vehicles in 57 countries with so many suppliers and such a diverse country context and so many different sizes of people coming into the cafes. And as you said, everybody at 12:05, and then just the whole logistics of getting all of this together. I just had a couple of very initial questions as you were taking us through. My sense was that there were a lot of people who were capacitated, etc. But broadly, has there been a lot of enthusiasm behind how is the culinary team actually accepted and adapted to this new way of new approach to healthy food at work? How's that played out?
Great question, Trent. This has been a journey since 2016 for the culinary team. We just keep building on it and iterating. We're finding with the training model that the engagement and enthusiasm is heightened, and that when an hourly employee understands why they're putting out a meat dish and a comparative vegetarian dish, like a lamb dish and a paneer, they understand why they're doing that. And before, they didn't understand that. And so the buy-in has been terrific.
Super. One follow-up. Are you using specific indicators to track progress and across the organization as to how this is how the momentum is building up?
With the Plant Forward Kitchen training, we have metrics that are based on what's the number of cohorts, how many people are in the cohort, how many of those people in a cohort were promoted. We have a pre-course survey with a 30, 60, 90-day follow-up survey series. We have managers who are before and after surveys and culinary managers, and we're working on a consumer feedback loop. We have a little bit of one right now, but it doesn't give much specific data. So we're working on a better data feedback loop. From a day in the life, if it moves and doesn't go to the dish room as waste, I think it's success.
Yeah, very much. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for your presentation and your initial responses. I just want to move to Ty from Gain. Ty, could you sort of give us, from a nutrition perspective, just Gain's take on sustainable, healthier diets for all, particularly the most vulnerable, given the diversity? How does the whole plant forward kind of agenda sort of look to you from a nutrition lens?
Sure. Thanks, Tarun. And it was really good to see that presentation, Michael. I think we're really aligned in many ways with the presentation. And so I think it was really great to see this diversity of plant-based foods. That's one thing that we really emphasize when we are thinking about how do we drive nutritious diets with plant-based foods. Diversity really ensures adequacy. So the more colors you have on your plate, the mix of plant-based foods, thinking of fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, and whole grains. These provide different aspects that contribute to diet quality. They provide different nutrients that complement each other. And so when we think about plant-forward, plant-based diets, it's really important to encourage that diversity to ensure that we have nutrient adequacy. It's also important that these foods are mostly unrefined. Plant-based foods can be highly processed. We see products that are often called ultra-processed foods that make up a large share of diets in countries like the US, the UK, many high-income countries. And these are increasing in lower income countries as well. And the problem with these foods is twofold. So in one sense, they provide a lot of calories without a lot of nutrients. So they're displacing other more nutrient rich foods, more nutritious foods. And they also can often contribute to overeating because they're high in starch and fat. They're created to be very very palatable. They're hard to resist. So it's easy to overeat these foods. So when we think about really emphasizing plant-forward, plant-rich diets, we really want to see a diversity of unrefined or minimally processed foods taking up the large share of the diet. When we think about animal source foods, it's really, in our view, it's about moderating animal source foods. It's not really necessarily eliminating. And I liked what Michael presented on having this sort of, unprocessed or minimally processed meat options towards the end of the line, not being the centerpiece, but being there, right? So that there's options and they contribute a lot of nutrients that are in bioavailable forms that the body can absorb. So, iron and zinc and B12, things like that in small amounts can really contribute to nutrient adequacy. When we go really low in animal source foods, so thinking of vegetarian and vegan diets, their research shows they're very typically very protective of these chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, etc. But we really need to prioritize nutrient-dense versions. So having diversity of nutrient-dense foods and even fortified foods in some cases to fill some nutrient gaps. So, for a fully plant-based diet, a vegan type diet, B12, for example, is really challenging to get. And so having fortified products is really essential, and that can be done, in the processing stage. And then just ensuring the foods that are consumed are diverse and nutrient rich. So dark green leafy vegetables, things like kale, spinach, romaine lettuce, those types of things provide a lot of nutrients per calorie, and then legumes and seeds, for example, as well. It's also, and also the last thing I'll kind of say here is that it's important to really know the starting point. Are we in a high income country, for example, are we in the US, or are we in a lower income country where access to nutritious foods is very limited, and undernutrition is widespread. So one thing we see is that many countries in sub-Saharan Africa and in South Asia consume very, very little animal source foods. And so in these populations, actually an increase can sometimes improve nutrition. And so it's really about knowing the context, what is a starting point, and also the population group that we're reaching. So certain populations, women of reproductive age, very young children, older adults, have increased nutrient density requirements. So they require higher nutrient density in their foods to achieve their recommended nutrient intakes. So I think that's really important to understand that everyone's different. Every life stage is different, and there's different needs in those life stages. So it's really important to make sure that people who have increased requirements have the nutrients they need to thrive. I'll end there, but really excited about questions as well and Q&A.
Thanks, Ty. Yeah. So I guess you highlighted the whole complexity as you move across the globe. Nutritional needs are different. The food cultures are different. The between the plant and the animal foods, the whole ratio proportions of what people are actually consuming is also different. So I guess there's not one single approach that can work. It will need to be tweaked and varied by regions where we are. Did I hear you say that plant foods are always healthy and sustainable, plant-based foods, or you had a caveat around that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We hear often that plant-based is healthy. It's sort of implied when you hear plant-based, it sounds healthy, and that's really not always true. It really depends on the processing of the food and what's been done to it. And so a lot of these foods, if we think about some of the more foods that are promoted as being plant-based or vegan, often go through a lot of processing that can remove beneficial compounds, nutrients. It actually degrades the food matrix to be over processed. And so there's this aspect of processing that can really impact the health of the foods that we're eating. What I loved in Michael Kahn's presentation, we saw some pictures of foods, and they were mostly unrefined foods. And these are foods that are very close to their form or processed in ways that maintain the nutritional value. And so that's really important when thinking plant-based. When we're communicating about plant-based, yes, plant-rich diets are really important for health and environmental sustainability. Now, the type of plant-based food and the processing done to that food really does matter. So we're really intentional about ensuring we're promoting foods that have retained their nutritional value when we are thinking about plant-rich foods.
Are there any sort of specific demographic sort of groups that sort of leap out at you when you sort of look at stark differences in consumption? Are there specific demographic groups, either by income or age, that you find very sharply differ in terms of their consumption? Let's say of highly sweetened products or highly ultra-processed products. Younger people take more, or how does that play out?
So there are quite a few variations by demographic group, and we're only starting to see this at a global level. We have new data from the Gallup World Poll where we're looking at diet quality for the first time, and we have data on 85 countries, and it's really fascinating to see. Some of the patterns are predictable. So when we see by wealth, you mentioned wealth or income, higher income populations, even within the same country, consume more diverse foods, more foods that are, healthy in terms of protecting against non-communicable diseases and as well as providing essential nutrients. However, those same populations are more likely to consume foods that are unhealthy, sugar-sweetened beverages, for example. And so we really see this pattern that's hard to break. As populations gain wealth, they consume more healthy foods, but also more of the unhealthy foods. And it's a real challenge to kind of address that issue. We see other patterns for really interestingly between men and women. across all of the countries that we looked at, there are no countries where women consume more sugar sweetened beverages than men. In fact, in the majority of countries, men consume significantly more. And that's pretty widespread across countries of different incomes, of different regions. When we look at other unhealthy foods, men typically consume higher amounts of those unhealthy foods as well. And of course, certain populations, if you're urban or rural and in different ages, have different consumption patterns, but those are what stood out in our data thus far. And so it really brings to mind, wow, everyone has not just different needs nutritionally, but they're also consuming different foods. And so the starting point is going to be different. And that's really important. For the first time, we're seeing these differences by gender and by age and all of these different patterns.
Fascinating. Thanks so much, Tynes. One could have a very longish discussion on this. It's very, very interesting the way differences by demography, geography, and income, and all of that. So let me move to Peter. Peter, recently a published document has sort of come out on integrating environment sustainability into healthy food at work, and how organizations can actually bring best practice into responsible business reporting as well, and share that best practice more widely, so that the whole movement towards healthier diets at the workplace can be catalyzed. So would be very happy to hear your initial remarks.
Thank you, Tarun. You probably did the introduction better than I could have done it, so thank you for that. So yeah, I'm not an expert in food or workforce nutrition. I like food, but I'm an expert in European legislation, and particularly in what's called environmental, social, and governance reporting. And I've worked with the WNA last year and this year on 2 papers that looked at exactly like you said. How can we incorporate workforce nutrition, healthy food at work in reporting standards, in companies reporting on their environmental, social, and governance programs. And by integrating that, we're trying to do 2 things. One is nudge or encourage companies to get credit for the work they do, and therefore encourage them to bring healthy food at work into their buildings. And the other thing about reporting standards is that it often works as a guide. It often gives companies a roadmap or a route to identifying how they can do it. So last year we looked at a paper, and it looked specifically at employee well-being and how healthy food at work would sort of support well-being of employees. This year we looked at a paper, and the paper I think is just published today or tomorrow, so it's going to be online for people who want to look at it. And it looks specifically at, are there environmental or sustainability indicators that also can link to healthy food at work? And Michael touched upon some of them. And so what we're trying to do is, are there indicators that companies can use to both promote healthy food at work and also look at their environmental impacts? And we looked at 3 broad ones that we could identify, and probably 1 smaller or minor one. So the 3 big ones are sustainable sourcing. So trying to prioritize localized food or products, seasonal products, collaborating, like Michael said, with suppliers that allow for certification, responsible source planning. The second area is really about managing food waste. How can you do that? Track food waste, set up systems to manage the food waste and see where it goes. Looking at reducing food waste by preparing dishes to order. So the number of things that Michael mentioned that I think are important there as well. And the third one is reducing food packaging. So it's looking at adjusting procurement sizes, where you can buy in bulk rather than in small bits. Looking at sustainable packaging materials, reducing single-use products as much as you can in your cafeterias and in your canteens. So those are the broad three areas that we think can really link to existing reporting standards that are already in place, either European level or global level, or being supported by the UN, for example. And then the fourth one, an additional action, is really around probably menu planning, nudging your employees, training your employees, training the chefs, training the kitchen staff, but also employees on healthy choices. And what the paper does, it goes through those different criteria and then develops a table at the back that allows companies to look at what are specific indicators, environmental indicators that you could link to healthy food at work, and how would they link to existing reporting standards. And thereby, like I said, if WNA, together with supporting organizations, can make sure that those criteria are being adopted, being integrated into corporate reporting on ESG, will hopefully encourage healthy food at work programs. And that's the idea of the paper.
Thanks, Peter. Just a question. Could you give some examples of some simple metrics that organizations such as Google, which have such a large, diverse sort of footprint, scale, multiple geographies, are there very simple metrics they could capture, track, measure, and report on?
Yeah, I think there's certainly metrics. I wouldn't say they're simple. Michael might disagree with me, but there are certain things that you can track. So, for example, if we look at sustainable sourcing, you could try to identify how much, or percentage-wise, how much of the food is locally sourced. And you can define the locality, but how much is locally sourced. If you look at food waste, you can start looking at, okay, how much waste is being generated. And what I liked about sort of Michael's presentation is that there's a really nice hierarchy of ambitions or objectives. So it's the main sustainability commitments, and one of them is about reducing food loss and waste by 50% per Googler. So you can really track that, and the nice and the elegant way of that indicator is that whether you're a very big organization or a smaller organization, you can really try to identify what is the waste per person and how can I try to reduce that. On reducing packaging waste, optimizing packaging waste, I think you could really look at how much percentage-wise of my packaging is sustainable. Does any of my packaging goes into waste, goes to landfill, or are we recycling it? Are we reusing things? So I think it's around those indicators that you can look. So, like I said, the three broad areas are very much like sourcing. There's some indicators there in the table we developed, food waste management, and optimizing packaging, optimizing food packaging.
Thanks, Peter. I just want to try and sort of link, the three presentations and remarks. So, I mean, what I was sort of capturing mentally was balanced plant forward approaches hold immense potential for impact. Large systemic changes, such as Google's, need to necessarily acknowledge and respond to diversity by geography, food culture, and existing nutrition profile of key demographic groups. And obviously, Google is doing that, and that is an example that other organizations could also imbibe. Metrics to track progress and report on ESG can demonstrate commitment, purpose, and corporate responsibility as well. The picture is quite complex, but very, very promising, and holds the potential of large-scale impact and change across the private sector. Just a few questions. Michael, how do the indicators recommended sort of by Peter, how do they look to you? Are there any additional indicators that you find relevant to measure and potentially report as well?
I love the ESG measurements. They're quite often easy to quantify because they're set up specifically for us. Like we do scope 3, we do supplier diversity, right, based on country. What's hard is some of the qualitative. Did we increase the taste? Did someone eat more because we cooked it better? Those are the hard ones, and that's the nuance that we're really trying to carve out. We are a data-driven company, and everything needs to be a KPI, a key performance indicator-based data target. Those qualitative ones are really hard. When I say we do a pre-survey and 3 post-surveys, not everybody in the upline thinks that's a decent metric because it's so relative to the person. But so we're always looking for better data and new data, always looking at what other people are doing. We're not on the journey alone. We're all in it together.
Ty, a question for you. So based on the Google presentation, are there additional observations that you can provide sort of to bring in a nutrition perspective on Google's approach and initiatives? Do they resonate with Gain's vision of food systems delivering healthier and sustainable diets for all?
Yeah, I think they're largely aligned. We see, I think, similar goals. One of the things that we probably want to assure in the background is that the diets are nutritionally adequate. And so just one thing that's when people are choosing their foods, that's of course a challenge. You can't necessarily force people to choose all of the most nutritious foods, but any of the foods where nutrition has been removed or they're a bit less nutritious, I'm thinking about some of the perhaps refined flours, for example, in bread or different products like that, just ensuring that they're really meeting fortification standards so that we're providing those additional nutrients in those foods. So when consumers are choosing those on their plate, they're also contributing a bit more to nutrient adequacy. And then I think when Michael was presenting about, Google's making choices to support regenerative type of agriculture, right? Sustainable practices. And they're doing that without really getting any sort of recognition for that. And I think one key thing that I would hope to see is that we can start having more certifications and ways of ensuring that suppliers are, meeting certain standards or producing foods in more sustainable ways. That should be something that we can count on, where you can measure it, you can track it, you can claim it, you can say, look, we're actually sourcing from producers that are providing much more positive impacts to the environment, and being able to quantify that, I think, would be really, really beneficial. At this point, it seems it's Google is doing this because they care about the environment, right? But we should also have some way to get recognition for that and to be able to show that, give them easy options to choose which suppliers are doing things in sustainable ways.
Peter, from your perspective, how replicable could the balanced plant forward approach adopted by Google across the private sector, how replicable could this be? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so again, I'm not a food expert, so I'm very much looking at it. But what are particular metrics that fall out of it that we can use? And Michael's absolutely right. I mean, there are some really, let's call them easy ones, sort of quantitative ones, whether they're to do with carbon emissions, whether they're to do with measuring waste that you can capture, and then there are some more difficult ones around, does the food taste nice, and then there are probably some other ones in there as well that I think could nicely translate to other organizations as well, which is this whole idea of training that Michael explained. So the number of chefs and kitchen personnel that are being trained. So training and capturing training or employees is really quite an integral part of reporting on ESG. So showing numbers of people that are getting trained on this and a program that you roll out, I think is quite powerful. So I think the ideas that Michael presented are very transferable to organizations. And what I was looking at is, are there any underlying indicators that you can identify as part of that whole program that you can transport as well? So beyond the easy ones. And then Ty was talking about certification, and I think that's another area where ESG reporting looks at very much. It's sort of, how do you manage your suppliers? How do you work with your suppliers? How do you identify and rate and manage your suppliers? So some certification on products, some certification around suppliers that do good work, again, is something that I think can be transferred. So I think there are a lot of elements in there that could be transferred. Again, I'm not going to say easily, but have a lot of very attractive elements that can be transferred to other organizations.
Thank you, Peter. Let me hand over to Barbel. Barbel, I think there are questions that other people want to ask, and perhaps if you could moderate those, please.
Yes, thank you, Tarun. There's one question to Michael. It is regarding food waste. So how do you measure the reduction of food waste, in absolute terms or in relative data? Could you elaborate on this, please?
Yeah, we do it in absolutes, and we do it by very prescriptive pillars and modeling. So we use various companies. Two we're piloting with. One has a very large footprint globally with us. So we actually weigh everything, code what it is. Was it trim waste? Was it overproduction? Was it out of code? Was it post-consumer, pre-consumer? And that wraps it all up by ingredient type, by cost. And so we see it every single day, and we see pictures. I can go dig into pictures of it every single day. And every week on Monday, I get a report that says globally what the total waste was. So that is a very specific, data-driven, enabled situation that's been very helpful. I do have to mention a lot of conversation about single-use plastic. We just simply didn't have time today. We have a whole single-use plastic reduction focus as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Michael. And there's another question that goes more on qualitative data to Ty and to Michael. So are there any health improvement matrices that you use? And specifically from Emma Lanza's question is, how do you measure benefits for the employees regarding nutritional knowledge or the confidence to make healthy choices? Ty, would you like to start?
I don't have a lot of expertise on this area, so I don't want to. I don't think I'd want to answer without having that expertise. I think nutritional knowledge is critical and empowering. So I think that being able to demonstrate that is important, but I don't have expertise on how to go about that.
Michael, do you have some experience in measuring the choice architecture for your Google Earth?
It's very complicated. Everybody's nutritional need is different. And so we have generalized nutritional needs, and we offer in generalities what we believe are better than reduced corn syrup, greater leafy greens. But my diet is different than Ty's and different than Peter's, and we're all very, how we might map up on a scale and in a full body scan might be very different based on what we eat. And there is a lot going on in a different pillar of Google with Tufts University about food as medicine. I am with Ty. I am not an expert on that. My charge is to feed people and give them choices that they want to eat. We do have a lot of dietitians who work specifically with people. It was interesting. I was at a conference last week, though, where the growing of the food and the nutrient density of the food is really becoming more and more of a focus. And it's something, it doesn't solve the individual nutrition, but it is something easier for me to apply, right? Is by better grown food, it's better for people eating it, depending on what they choose.
I think I can just maybe say, not related to nutritional knowledge, but related to tracking diet quality. I think you could measure diet quality of people who are going into the workplace. And I think that, you know, we have tools like the diet quality questionnaire that are quick and simple to administer that could demonstrate a change when you make a change in the setup, right? When you make a change in what foods are being offered, what is the order of the foods, those types of things. Those could be monitored and tracked. So you can see, wow, we made these changes in our food environment, let's say, and we had this change on diet quality, because these indicators really reflect aspects of dietary adequacy and moderation when thinking about limiting these foods that increase risk for non-communicable diseases. I think that's really important too, not just the knowledge component.
Thank you both. Thank you. I think we're coming at the end of our webinar, and I would like to thank Michael Kahn as our Lighthouse for the Workforce Nutrition Alliance. Thank you for being with us. And what I think everybody can do now, right now, even tomorrow, because you mentioned the 6 choices of architecture. So you could already put your portions according to plant-based portions in the right presentation. You could make offerings that are the healthy offerings in the beginning of the catering. You could do the right placement, the presentation, the promotion, and the personalization. So this you can do with the existing food already tomorrow. Thank you for being with us, Michael, and I'm very pleased that together with the CGF that you are our Lighthouse, and thank you for the good collaboration. And I think, yeah, a lot of companies say always, oh, if Google does it, we can't do it. But I think you gave so many practical examples that everybody can do. Thank you for it. Tai, I am coming to you, and you are really a leader in healthy diet related to environmental impacts. And I really thank you for being the leader in the field and giving the differentiation that is necessary in the global context, because we are, in the end, we want to drive global impact. Peter, I'm grateful for you, because you make it measurable. You make it measurable in a system that is really accountable, where companies really account for. So thank you for helping us bring it into the right measurement mechanism, and giving every company also the possibility to highlight the benefits of healthy food at work in their context. Tarun, as always, you are a moderator by heart and by choice, and I'm grateful for you, for your presence and shaping the whole discussion in the way how you're doing it. And Sharon, we as co-founders, I'm utterly grateful for you being with us together. And we have this was the first Google, and that was the first webinar with our Lighthouse leaders, and we have another one. So today is the World Gastronomy Day, so that is the reason why we did it on this day, specific days. And then we have another event on the 4th of September, together with Olam Food Ingredients, on the topic of breastfeeding, and then together with the World Benchmarking Alliance on their gender benchmark. So it will be a very interesting conversation we are having. So examples from a Lighthouse leader, and reflected from World Benchmarking Alliance. So I love to join you. I ask you to join us on the 4th of September. And in the meantime, the ones who really want to join now, to start the journey on healthy food at work, you can start in September with our personalized masterclass. And the masterclass is really a practical tool. We have already trained 40 executives in more than 20 countries, 28 countries in the world, and it's a great opportunity for you starting and getting guidance. And for now, I would like to thank you, everybody, and all the listeners, and for your attentiveness, for your questions. And I would like to close the webinar and wishing you all a good evening, day, or a wonderful morning. Goodbye.